I am speaking with Emily Giles. She is a senior specialist species conservation with World Wildlife Fund Canada. As the world's leading conservation organization, WWF works in nearly 100 countries to tackle endangered species and climate change, protecting and restoring wildlife and their habitats. Hi, Emily. Happy Endangered Species Day.
Hi, Robert. Thank you so much for having me here today.
Is that weird? Should we be celebrating?
That's a good question. I think we should be celebrating in the sense that it's really important to be talking about endangered species and talking about Endangered Species Day, because it's important for people in Canada and for people around the world to know about species at risk and endangered species. So I really think that people like to protect things they know about. So this is kind of the first step in getting people to learn more about them.
Why is this day important?
Well, as I was saying too, it's really important to raise awareness generally about wildlife and about the fact that around the world and here in Canada, we're in what we call a biodiversity crisis. Many people probably don't know that right here in Canada, we have over 700 species that have been assessed as being at risk of extinction. So it's really, really important that we talk about it and we teach people about the things that they can do to help biodiversity and wildlife.
Yeah. What is the difference between vulnerable, near-threatened, endangered, critically endangered?
So those are all different categories that the IUCN, or the International Union for the Conservation of Nature, which is the global body that looks at endangered species. Those are the categories that they assess species as they're at risk or as their threatened level. So, for example, least concern means that there's still quite a few of them left in the wild, and we don't need to be worried about them immediately becoming at risk. Whereas critically endangered means that they're at imminent risk of becoming endangered in the wild. So we have to take steps to try and help them from becoming extinct or lost to the world.
Yeah. What about least concern? Does that mean we don't have to worry about them?
It doesn't mean that we don't have to worry about them. It means that their population numbers are still healthy in the wild. But as conservationists, we still like to talk about the least concerned ones and make sure that we have enough protected areas and places like parks to make sure that they stay least concerned and that they don't become threatened with extinction down the road. So we always like to make sure that we're protecting the ones that are still doing well, while also working really, really hard to reverse the decline that we're seeing in those endangered species.
Yeah. What sort of animals are endangered in Canada?
So as I mentioned, we have over 700 species that are endangered in Canada. And those include all sorts of animals, so and plants as well. So we're talking about everything from trees, like say, for example, we've got the American chestnut tree, which is endangered. Also insects, turtles, frogs, mammals, all sorts of things are considered to be, unfortunately, endangered in Canada. And some of the more well-known species at risk in Canada are things like the barren ground caribou, which you might have heard of. You probably know it more as the more common name, the reindeer. That's actually an endangered species in Canada. A lot of people probably don't know that. We've also got beluga whales that live in the St. Lawrence River. That population is endangered, as well as, unfortunately, there's a big long list of things that I could name.
Yeah. What is the cutest animal you've ever seen in Canada?
That is a great question. And believe it or not, one of the hardest questions I find to answer, because there are so many very cute animals that we have in Canada. So I have to say, of course, my dog Jake, who's now barking right now. Sorry, that was a good cue. My dog Jake is the cutest. But in terms of wild animals, have you ever seen the movie called Piper that Pixar made? That's about a plover chick. And the piping plover, I think, is probably the cutest animal that we have in Canada, especially their chicks. They look like little cotton balls with legs. They're just adorable. And unfortunately also endangered.
What are the most endangered species globally?
So around the world, actually WWF just recently put out a series of puzzles called Endangered Pieces. And those highlight some of the most endangered animals around the world. And what we did with those puzzles was for every single individual animal remaining in the wild, that represents the number of puzzle pieces that there are in the puzzles. So for example, we had a puzzle for the southern resident killer whale, which is the orca whale population just off the coast of Vancouver. So that puzzle only has 73 pieces in it because there are only 73 whales left in the wild. Another puzzle that we did was for the Sumatran tiger. That's 400 tigers left in the wild, and there's about 400 pieces. So those are some of the most critically endangered species around the world.
More than 40,000 species are threatened with extinction. That is 28% of all assessed species. It feels like basically all animals are endangered except dogs and cats. What is your favorite animal?
My favorite animal is an animal called the white-handed gibbon. I don't know if you've ever heard of gibbons before, but they are a primate. So just like you and I, they're primates. So they're closely related to us. And they live on an island, the ones that I saw anyway, live on an island in Borneo in Southeast Asia. So I got to see them in the wild when I did some field work there when I was younger. They're also an endangered species. They are in trouble because of habitat loss and logging, which is happening over there. And the reason that I fell in love with them is because they are really incredible acrobats. They do an incredible job of swinging through the trees and kind of showing off their skills. So that's the reason why I like them. And you often find them in zoos because they're very entertaining, and a lot of people really like the gibbon like I do.
Cool. Mine is a green turtle. They eat seagrass and plastic bags. It seems like kids just bringing a reusable bag to the store doesn't matter, but an estimated 300 million plastic bags every year end up in the Atlantic Ocean alone. Lots are killed as bycatch too, so going vegan would help. And always knock your sandcastles down on the beach when you're done building them. Otherwise, baby turtles can get stuck in them when they hatch. What other things can kids do to save the animals they love?
Well, those were some great tips that you just gave right there. Absolutely. I think, you talked about the fact that plastic bags are bad for turtles. They're bad for a lot of other animals that live in the water too. And not just plastic bags, but plastic generally and garbage. So there are so many things that kids can do. So I'm really glad that you asked that question. So of course, things like cutting down on your garbage, cutting down on your plastic, making sure you recycle at home. Those are all really important things. There's lots of beach cleanups and ways that you can get involved right in your community. I think getting involved locally is a really, really important thing that kids can do. Get to know your neighbors that way, you get to meet people and get out and really start to care about your local environment. So I always think volunteering is a great thing to do. And no matter where you are in Canada, there are little steps that you can take. You might have done this at home too, Robert, but one of the things that I think is really important, especially right now, because it's May and so many people are starting to go outside more and get gardens ready and do all that kind of stuff. And the things that you plant in your garden can make a huge difference for wildlife. So you've probably seen monarch butterflies, which are the orange and black butterflies flying around. They depend on milkweed. So if you plant milkweed in your garden, that's really important for them. They're another endangered species. Planting plants, we call them native plants. So plants that are naturally found in your region are really, really important to help support all the local bees and local pollinators. And when you have a healthy insect base, that helps all of the other wildlife that live in the region. So it kind of starts with the plants as one of the most important things.
Yep. Click the link below to donate to World Wildlife Fund. And remember, together kids can save the world. Please like and subscribe. Thank you. Bye.
Awesome. Thanks, Rob.